And we're back again. It's Gerald coming right back at you here. It's going to be a decent weekend here at the box office coming up. We've got, like I've said before, we've got Black Klansman coming from Spike Lee. That's available in a limited number of theaters. Also, as well, The Meg, the movie, which I guess depending on who you talk to, could be a real pleaser with the large shark trying to eat Jason Statham, among others. And then there's another movie I want to talk about, which I've got a special guest here for today. It's regards to, I guess, the myth, and then also as well, it's been created into a horror movie, and that is Slender Man. It's based off the myth, it's based off the urban legend and whatnot. And I was thinking, who is the best person to talk about it? Well, I have got a great idea on who to talk about it. It's our good friend. He is our expert when it comes to horror movies, mystery, and dare I say the macabre as well, plus a lot of other great pop culture topics. If you have not heard his show, Honeyqueen, you are missing out because it's an awesome show. You can find it on Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many other major outlets. It's my good friend. It's Jason FineBurgh. What's up, my friend?
How you doing? Thank you for the intro. Yes, and after a long winter's nap, which I'm not going to get into, and I want to thank everyone behind the scenes that was very supportive, including you, Gerald. I will be back in September. I have a very small summer preview, 2 episodes that are going to be coming out this month. I'll talk about them in a little bit, but for now, yeah, is 2018 an interesting year for horror, especially with this Slender Man movie? This is an invention. I mean, there's always been discussion of shadow people and mythological, or I should say cryptozoology now. It's more cryptozoology than anything. But Slender Man seems to be an invention that's only, I would say, about close to 8 years old to 10 years old. It was created through something awful, and it's pretty much a very tall, slender person with no face. It's tall, it's thin, it wears a 1930s, kind of like a Jack Skellington outfit, if you will. But it's not like Jack Skellington from Nightmare Before Christmas, but it's still one of those pimped out tuxedos with the white stripes. And I don't think I've seen those in decades. Pretty much with Slender Man, it's not that you can summon him or it just sort of appears. And like most myths, it seems to come in sleepy towns that you've never heard of, mostly Midwest. It's a creature that seems to like to abduct children. Now, I thought this was created so you would have parents scaring kids not to go into the woods and, rural areas. But apparently nobody seems to be safe because Slender Man has been known to show up in suburban areas as well. Through creepypasta, there was a mock 911 call. It's on YouTube. It's really creepy. I suggest that if you play it late at night with the lights off, it'll keep you up for a while. It deals with 2 little girls. They're making a 911 call to a dispatcher, and one of them is not right in the head. The other one is trying to talk to the dispatcher, saying that there's a man outside that keeps staring at them, and the dispatcher is asking, what does it want? And this little girl says that they're scared, and the dispatcher, of course, is sending out police cars. However, by the time the police cars come, because the suspension of time, apparently Slender Man, like most creatures, has supernatural powers that are beyond all physics, seems to slow down time, and eventually, through this transcript that we see and hear from this little girl and a dispatcher, Slender Man has come closer and closer to this suburban household, broken into the window, because it's one of these houses where the living room is in, the front of the house, and, where the window's in the front, and it smashes the window. And when the dispatcher, after 30 seconds of silence, asks if the little girl is okay, because he keeps asking, she doesn't respond, The little girl apparently is no longer skin. Oh, he just wanted to play. And then the Slender Man apparently picks up the phone and tells the dispatcher that he's going after his kids. And that's how it ends. So if you go on to youtube.com, creepypasta, Slender Man, dispatcher transcript, it's really, it kind of tells you what this thing is about. So I don't know too much about the movie other than they're trying to make it like Jeepers Creepers, where it's in a small rural town. There's a girl that's heard about this myth. It's been around for, they've stretched out and changed the mythology as Hollywood always does. And they're going to make it where this girl is going to hunt and try to kill Slender Man. I have a problem with that. I think Slender Man would work better in today's age where YouTube and you can make your own movies and there's a lot of good fan-made films out there. I don't think we need to do this in first person like Blair Witch, but I do think that if you really want to make like a fan-made, like how Creepypasta did with the transcripts, the dispatcher transcripts, I think that would work out a lot better. I don't think that this would work for a 90-minute movie.
And that's something else I wanted to get into, because along with the urban myth of the Slender Man came the unfortunate news that there was a coordinated fatal incident in regards to some girls that were trying to coerce this other girl because of the Slender Man issue, and unfortunately, it led to an unfortunate death. And because of it, there are now 3 lives that are forever changed because of the urban myth of Slender Man. Seeing that took place, about maybe a year or 2 ago, as far as in the courts and whatnot, it's still fresh in a lot of people's minds. Could there be some backlash with a Slender Man movie opening in regards to this? Is it a good idea or an appropriate time for a movie studio maybe to be putting out something like this so soon after an incident so horrific as what was told in regards to the Slender Man murder?
That's an excellent question, but the problem, it always is going to come down to what happens in REL life compared to REL life, fictional life and real life. I think the problem is that people are always going to look for a scapegoat. I could say, well, there were several movies that were shelved indefinitely because of September 11th, and it was just too hot of a topic. And you had to change, especially with there was a Ben Affleck, Morgan Freeman movie, The Sum of All Fears, where it was about terrorists, but because of September 11th, it had to be pushed to 2002, and the Iranian terrorists were switched out and neo-Nazis were put in. Because of an incident that happened somewhere, and I've heard that there's actually theaters that are banning screenings of Slender Man because of incidents and worriment, which is people are worried about incidents and repercussions and predicaments. So I compound it all into worriment. My own 2 cents is if people take something way too seriously from a fictional or mythological and don't understand it, it's the parents' responsibility to educate the kids. If you're dealing with closed-minded parents, that's one thing. But you still have to be responsible for your kids. And if you're having kids that are being coerced into doing things they shouldn't be doing, I'm not going to blame the studios. Yes, the studios have a certain responsibility, but to a point. It goes back to the parents, not the studios. Yes, I understand that there was no control with September 11th. Yes, I understand there was no control with school shootings, and certain movies had to be pushed back. I mean, Bruce Willis's Death Wish had to be pushed back for a month because of all the school shootings that happened last year. That movie almost got shelved because of it. I understand what's going on in the world, and the world has gotten much more scarier than it should be. But I don't think a movie coming out that just coincidentally has something to do with another incident, I don't think the movie is to blame. Parents should be responsible, and there should be some sort of common sense. So no, I'm not going to blame this on a movie. And whatever happens in the movie may not happen with a real life incident. And I can go with so many, again, I'm going to say with so many school shootings and terrorist attacks, movies are meant for escape and fiction. And yes, I understand that everybody wants an escape and they don't really want to go to a movie about shootings when they're seeing about school shootings. And I get all that. Don't blame the movie. One, I know it's just a coincidence. It has nothing to do with the other.
And finally, on this subject, when it comes to Slender Man, it's coming out to theaters this weekend. It may be one of the last big releases of the month, if you consider it a big release. In regards to August, is it traditionally a slow time? In fact, Mission Impossible Fallout has led the past 2 weekends at the box office. The Meg is actually being introduced in more theaters and is projected to do a little bit stronger than the Slender Man movie is right now. But as you and I both know, when we followed the box office movie scene, and in particular the horror movie scene, the first 2 weekends are specifically important to probably more than any other industry, the horror movie industry, because in the first 2 weekends, that's when people go to see horror movies. So I want to hear your thoughts. Is the Slender Man movie, because these first 2 weekends are truly important to the film's long-term success, or any success for that matter, do you think it's going to see some type of box office revenue, or well enough to be considered a staple in the horror movie industry?
Yes and no. I think the problem is that August and January seem to be these 2 months where after summer blockbusters come and go, August is a dumping ground. January is that once all the Academy Award, Oscar buzz movies die down, January and February is a dumping ground. August seems to be a dumping ground for horror movies nowadays because of, I think, those Conjuring and Insidious movies that came out. And I think it's because nothing else is playing. It seems smart. So now every horror movie idea is going to come out in August because The Conjuring did well at the box office, and Annabelle, the prequel to Annabelle Rising, or Annabelle the Dark, whatever you want to call it, because that did well. But don't forget, if a movie came out in mid or late July, and I can go back to, we're celebrating 10 years of Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, and that was a July release, and that was box office king for about 5 to 6 weeks, maybe more, until I think Ben Stiller's movie came along. I think it has to do with word of mouth more and advertising. I think The Meg is doing so well because that trailer showed more in theaters. It didn't matter what the movie was. The Meg was somehow shoved in your face. Slender Man, I think people are just hoping that because it was discussed on the internet here or there, that's why it's being made, but I don't think it was marketed as well as the Meg. Meg was brought up, I think, late February, early March. So it just didn't come out when the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom movie came out, and bam, I knew that was going to be shoved in my face, but there were posters, there were those giant stands, those giant cardboard stands. Slender Man, every now and then I would see a poster at a movie theater and go, okay, well, and it's just Slender Man standing there, and you're hoping, well, that's Slender Man. But the Meg, not only does it have that giant cardboard cutout where you can take pictures in front of it because it's a new thing now, but there's powers to be made sure that trailer would be out every single movie that people were going to go see, whether it be Jurassic World or whether it be Teen Titans Go. And I'm not kidding, it was in front of that. Because the interesting thing now is with digital projectors, they're using Wi-Fi, so it's a crapshoot. You don't know what trailers are going to pop up. There's a big thing now, especially when you purchase a DVD and you have it connected to your PlayStation or Xbox, and you have that option where if you want to go on the internet, it generates previews. Because usually previews would come with your DVD, but now they just generate online before you're watching the movie. So you never know what's going to pop up. There was a lot smarter marketing with one. And unfortunately, Slender Man will just be whispered, and Hollywood will go, well, we tried, and no, that's not how it works. Meg, I think, really, and they weren't just dependent. It's a giant shark movie and Jason Statham. They knew how to market that movie more. And I think that's why it's going to work a lot more. Even though it's a dumb movie, and Jason Statham is fun to watch, don't get me wrong. But, you know, the studio made sure that they were going to take extra steps to let you know this movie was going to be coming out.
Once again, got it. Bad again. Oh, I got feedback. Hold on. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Oh, there you go. All right. All good now.
Yes.
Once again, I'm with Jason. Once again, I'm with Jason FineBurgh from Honeyqueen. You got to check out his awesome podcast covering not only just the horror genre, but pop culture in general. You got to check it out today. All of his back episodes on Podbean, also Spotify, also Apple Podcasts, and many more podcast outlets. Before I let you go, my friend, I wanted to ask you, it's still, but there's still some few months to go as far as the movie season is concerned. The year in movies is obviously far from being done. There's a lot of horror movies that are still left to, step up to the plate and show off their wares. I think the one that obviously is getting the most pub at this point in time, obviously coming off some great momentum at San Diego Comic-Con, was the latest rendition of Halloween with a returning Jamie Lee Curtis returning to her iconic role from the previous movie that she did back in the 70s. Your thoughts on not only that movie, but some other horror movies that you're keying in on this season for the rest of this year when it comes to going to the movies and catching the latest horror movie flicks.
Well, as for Halloween, I'm just going to say right now, it's not that I'm not a fan of John Carpenter. I just never got into the series because I like what John Carpenter did, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have Friday the 13th and we wouldn't have Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, you can say that Wes Craven tried with Last House on the Left, but I think John Carpenter really knew how to do the slasher movie. But then we got all those sequels, and then they tried with Halloween Water, H2O, which didn't work as well as one hoped. Halloween 3 is a guilty pleasure of mine. I understood that they tried to do an anthology, because what else could they really do with Michael Myers since he doesn't really talk? And then if we were introduced to comedian Mike Myers, so I can understand. But I'm assuming that with this Halloween 2, it means that all the sequels never happened. That the original Halloween 2 never happened, that nothing never, the entire series never existed. It was just that first one, and now this is the actual sequel that's coming out. But without Donald Pleasance, because he passed, I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm intrigued, especially since, again, she died in one of the movies, but again, since they rebooted everything, who knows? Horror movies to me have become a dime a dozen, but the one that intrigues me, and I've seen the preview for this because I don't know if it's a jump scare movie or not. I've seen The Conjuring, and I've seen Annabelle, and I've seen Annabelle Creation. Now we have The Nun. And I guess what could be scarier than a nun? And I kind of seen this genre before where nuns have been possessed by demons, but Conjuring wasn't a bad idea of the jump scare and using the right sound effects and playing in the shadows. So I am going to go with that movie because it seems to be the runt of the litter. I mean, I could make jokes and say Aquaman, because when is the DC universe ever going to make a better... But that Shazam trailer looks interesting. I mean, I have to say, I think maybe they're making things lighter. But I'm going to put my money on the Nun. I don't think it's going to make the money that they're hoping for. And I've read the Warren's tales on demonology. I've seen footage from their museum in Connecticut. I never got a chance to go there. And I've seen footage of the actual Annabelle doll that's actually a Raggedy Ann doll. And all the stories and what they've dealt with over the years with regards to demonology and what the real Annabelle has done. But I wish Carpenter, Jamie Lee Curtis, and the rest good luck, but I'm kind of curious in a world of reboots and remakes and sequels, and I don't think The Nun is going to be trying as hard as it hopes for. And Annabelle, again, didn't scare me so much as more of a jump scare, but it worked when it needed to. There are bits and parts where when it needed to scare you, there are still memorable moments. So they depend on the trailer, but I think I'm going to go with The Nun.
That was something that's coming up in early September. Again, that's The Nun. That's a great pick right there. Also, there are movies such as Hellfest. That is also going to be coming wide here later this year. And then also Suspiria. And I think that's about it outside of the, like I had said earlier, the heavily anticipated Halloween reboot that's coming close to Halloween, of course. I believe about 2 weeks prior, just to make sure it gets in enough money beforehand, so you're not just banking on that Halloween audience right there. But those are some great movies that are coming out for the horror genre. So there is some movies left this year for horror movie fans. Jason, I'll tell you what, if it's so great to have you on the show talking about horror, but everything else pop culture. And for anybody out there that wants to check out some great pop culture podcasts outside of ours, they just need to look no further than the Hunnikween podcast. That's HUNNICWEEN. It's available on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Any other major outlets you like to push?
Oh God, I think we covered all of them. I think you discussing everywhere has just swollen my head. It's probably made it bigger than for all the places I could put the podcast. Well, I am going to be returning to not only the BS Podcast Network, but we're also going to be on Earth Station 1. I got to guest on them a couple weeks ago discussing the 30th anniversary of Roger Rabbit. So they were intrigued with my show. They listened to them. So Hunnikween will be on there next month as well. But in the meantime, for a fall preview, because I just wanted to let people know that I had been back. I promised to go back in January, and stuff happened. So I'll be back in September. But to let everybody know that I'm alive and okay, for this month, because of Teen Titans Go to the movies, or you know what, Teen Titans can go to hell. I like the 2003 series, not this bubblegum pop, whatever Teen Titans Go is. I'm going to be discussing my top 10 Teen Titans episodes and discuss why that 2003 series is better than Teen Titans Go. Although I've heard rumors that it's coming back, or there's a post-credit scene that they're coming back somehow. And then from there, I didn't get to do it last year. I'll be discussing it this year. It's now the 31st anniversary of the Garbage Pail Kids movie. I'll be giving my thoughts on why it still holds up to this day, and why. I mean, it's called the Garbage Pail Kids movie, so I don't, you get what you paid for.
This is true, and I remember collecting some as a kid. I know it was a novelty even at that point in time, and it's kind of, you brought those home after you bought it at the local market or the local liquor store, and you brought it home, and your mom just goes, "What's that? What is that?"
You
Just to
got them at
see.
the liquor store? I didn't even know the liquor store sold those.
Oh yeah. The liquor stores in my area in Southern California, they had arcade machines. They had all the different packs of collectible cards. But yeah, they were into anything that they could get their hands on that they could make money off of to sell to kids at that point in time. So yes, outside of just beer and wine, at that point in time, it was a big thing. Back in the 80s when arcade machines were pretty much everywhere, you could also they actually, a lot of them were smart enough to go ahead and try and sell kids other things as well, candy, popcorn. Well, we won't go into
Oh,
that,
no,
Jeff.
beer, liquor, and garbage pail kids. Yeah, I love the '80s. No, I got them. My father was a retired principal of a high school, so he confiscated most of them and gave them to me. That's how I got most of my collection. But it was great. But no, I'll just say right now, I couldn't get anybody to go to this movie with me because by the time the movie came out, because for a kid, time is like 3 weeks is forever for. So I couldn't get any of my friends to see this, and it came out in August, and my legal guardian at the time, I had to beg to take me to go to the 20-mile movie theater that was finally playing this thing. I walked out happy. I know she wasn't, but yeah, I could not. First of all, I'm glad it came out on VHS until I burned it out, but it finally came out on Blu-ray. The only features that they have is some interviews here or there. There's no commentary, but you get a lot of trivia. And then a year later, there's that 30 Years of Garbage documentary, so I'm happy.
That's, once again, we're talking about the Garbage Pail Kids movie, which he is going to be doing a future podcast on. And like I said, for anything outside of not just horror movies, but a lot of pop culture stuff. In fact, some of his latest episodes are reaching back into the vault to cover a lot of these Star Wars movies that he's talked about in the past as well. So you got to check that out. It is the Hunnick-Ween podcast, and you got to check it out today on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many other great outlets. Jason, as always, my friend, it's so great to talk to you. So great to keep in touch with you on everything going on within the realm of pop culture. But as our man in the know when it comes to horror, mystery, and the macabre, there's none better than you, my friend. Appreciate everything you do at Hunnick-Ween.
Oh, you're just saying that because you know it's true.
Yes, it is. So great to have you, as always, a part of the pop culture cosmos.